Well, I went because my dad was a 4-year World War II veteran, and I thought I needed to go. And the perception is that all the Vietnam veterans were drafted, and that's not true. That's not true at all. A lot of us went and joined, or some got drafted, and a lot of us volunteered for Vietnam. We just felt the need to do it. And then when you get there, you do what you have to do to get through a year. I guarded a base every night. And some nights it was quiet and some nights it wasn't. And those nights, all the nights were terrifying. Every one of them, because we worked from sunset to sunrise. So when the suns began to come up, you knew there wasn't any more trouble. But right before that, or say around 4 o'clock in the morning, you got so tired because you've been out there all those hours, and you knew you had to stay vigilant or you could die. And it was just a hard time to get through. When I knew it was my last night there, and the sun came up, I felt like cheering. But you know, we'd never talk that way to each other. We always say stupid stuff like, well, I hope they come at my part of the post tonight. I hope I'll tangle. We talked big like that to each other. Then when we got back, the internet was invented, and I hooked up with my 2 best friends, one from Washington State and one from Kentucky. And I talked about that, and they said, oh, we were all lying. We were all scared as hell.
Wow.
So they had to have you out of there in 1 year, and that's the way it was. So you knew that was the way it was going to be. But at one time they'll come to you and they'll say, well, you know, this is your last 5 days or 4 days or whatever. And then the guys that you're closest to will begin doing a little partying with you, happy that you're getting out of there. But you never say anything about fearing for them the way you do. You just do it and move on.
Can you talk about the sounds? You said some nights were quiet and other nights were.
Yeah, but you never knew which ones were which. We had no warning. Some nights were, but even if it was a quiet night, you didn't know if it was going to be, so you were still scared as hell. That's the way life is when you're doing that job.
Thanks for your service. What do you think about when somebody says that? Thank you for your service. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel good, but it took an awful lot of years. For 30 years, it wasn't like that. And then my wife and my father-in-law, who was a World War II veteran, got me involved in the Legion. I started doing military funerals. And when I saw what it meant, the military funeral rites that we do, what it means to the family and friends, that began my healing. And then after I started that, Louis Cartman, who did all this, got all this going, got me involved, and I was involved for a lot of years. And if you look there, I helped bring this helicopter back. I was in charge of bringing a helicopter back. Yeah.
How'd you get it back?
I have a friend who owned a trucking company. And I said, is there any way? He said, yes, I have the cab, I'll be the driver. He says, now you have to go to, he told me a place in Farley needed a special extra low trailer for that. And he says, you got to look into, you got to talk to all the law enforcement people along the way to let them know that you're doing it, and we'll be good. And he wouldn't even charge me for the gas. Another very good friend came, and he's really a handyman. He's a handyman, fix-up guy for Medical Associates. And he brought all kinds of stuff. I don't know how he knew he didn't know what to bring, he just brought it. We pulled out of Fort Dodge and we didn't get 5 miles and a blade came loose. So we pulled over to the shoulder and he had the strapping and stuff, Mike did, to fix it. And wow. And we brought it back here. When we got here, wow. I knew a lot of the veterans. I knew a lot of them. In my family and a lot of other families were here. But then over the side, there's 30 or 40 guys, veterans, that none of us knew, that didn't belong to anything but were Vietnam veterans and want to come down. See, this helicopter, they flew in pairs. They're gunships. And when you were in trouble in a Viet Cong, were all over you, the North Vietnamese, one helicopter would go in and fire on them until he ran out of ammunition. The other one was hanging back far enough that he couldn't be heard. When the remainder of them came out, the second helicopter came in and took care of the problem. And I suspect a lot of those people have been saved by this, as were people we saw in the fields or in the lawns mowing when we went by. They'd look up and see that. Wow. They hadn't seen a gunship like that for decades, I flew with Air Rescue. We were bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail and North Vietnam at night. And sometimes our pilots would get shot up and they'd try and make it back and they wouldn't quite make it. Well, they took 2 security guys along. We were part of the team then that night, because sometimes we'd have to get out and walk around the crash site and try and help locate people. At 19 years old, it feels so much better now than it did 30 years ago. People are recognizing us, and it's so nice that the Telegraph Herald said this year they really think it's important to get the stories from Vietnam veterans because we're getting up there, and we appreciate it. Thank you.